Welcome to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and we're here to preserve and promote culture, one weekly conversation at a time. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show through iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, and a whole bunch of other venues. Just visit our sites, chimeraobscura.com/VM or vmspod.com to find more information, along with our RSS feed. And follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at VMSPod. Well, we are back from Memorial Day weekend. It was cold and rainy here in New Jersey, so I pretty much just stayed in, recorded a pair of remote episodes, including this one, read too many books simultaneously, made a couple of breakthroughs with my drawing and now watercolor practice, and otherwise just hit out. I hope to write a couple of things, but I've talked about it before. My mind is just not in that space ever since I took up drawing, and I don't feel guilty about it because I'm still making art. So, hey, in other words, not much different from the past 15 months. What was neat was I did get to meet a neighbor of mine yesterday while I was drawing one of his trees, this mimosa that was getting its leaves a little later than the rest of the neighborhood trees. And we had a nice conversation, and he did not ask to see the drawing, so I'm pretty thankful, because it was all right, but I still needed to get the leaves in and was going to do that back at home, and he would have just seen all of these weird lines floating there, not knowing quite how they all fit together. And anyway, beyond that, today I had my first physical in 2 years, which went better than I had hoped, basically, or feared, whatever. I'm 50 now. I expect everything to be a disaster, and I did get referrals for all the things men in their 50s need to do. But on the way out, my doctor opens a door. He's about to leave. Then he turns around and says, "Oh, I forgot to ask. I'm supposed to ask everybody, how have you been?" So, I mean, I assumed he was talking about mental health, and so I took it in that direction, which I hope was the right way. And I said, it's been weird. Winter was depressing, and now, it's more about managing reentry, but it still remains weird. I guess he took the fact that I recognize the weirdness as a sign that I'm not losing my mind exactly, which deep down is actually the wrong approach to take. It's a sign that things really are going off the rails. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's get to everyday life. And that brings us to this week's episode and my guest, Keiler Roberts, who was on a few years ago and was on last year for a COVID check-in. Keiler has a new book out from Drawn and Quarterly called My Begging Chart. And Keiler is one of my favorite cartoonists around nowadays. Her comics, well, they chronicle domestic life and her precocious daughter, Xia, and the inner lives of her Barbie dolls, and Keiler's experience with multiple sclerosis, and the aging of family, and the weird minutiae of everyday life that somehow if we don't find miracles in them, at least we find laughs, not in a, over-the-top way, but she does this all in a kind of deceptively simple graphic style with this intensely wry dialogue. And to me, I just love any opportunity to see Keiler's work. And on the face of it, My Begging Chart, the new book, resembles her previous comics, but it's weird. There's this refinement to the new book, this kind of stripping away of the extraneous, like some things that in the past Keiler may have extended for a few panels or included a little exposition about, that's all been excised. And you get this sense that she's striving for something, like conveying a genuine moment with the fewest necessary elements. In comics, the obvious, parallel to this or example of this would be Ernie Bushmiller, but his Nancy strips were a lot different than Keiler's comics and what she's doing with those, and it's not gag oriented exactly. But weirdly, the thing that occurred to me while kind of trying to understand what was different about this and how, again, refined her comics have gotten, and nobody is ever going to make this comparison but me, was like LeBron James during his peak years with the Miami Heat, where he sort of experimented with things on the court. Like, he would go into games trying to figure out how to get to 30 points while taking fewer than 10 shots. And, would give himself these sorts of challenges and find ways of exceeding them over the course of a game and over the course of a season. And Keiler's getting across these gloriously ambivalent, fully lived through moments of her life without weighing down the panels or putting on the trappings or signifiers of deep meaning. And she does it while getting a ton of laughs. It's a really amazing work, and more amazing because she's doing this while, as I've said, living with MS and dealing with what that means. So my begging chart, you will laugh extensively. You will cringe over certain moments. You'll recognize life as we live it, which, is what art's supposed to do. So go read my begging chart, which is out now from Drawn and Quarterly. Now, here's Keiler's bio. Keiler Roberts makes autobiographical comics. She is a recipient of the Slate Cartoonist Studio Prize for Chlorine Gardens and is the author of Powdered Milk, Happy Happy Baby Baby, Miseryland, Rat Time, and Sunburning, which was recently translated into Spanish as Isolada. Also the winner of the Ignatz Award, Keiler teaches comics at the School of the Art Institute in Chicago. And now, the 2021 Virtual Memories Conversation with Keiler Roberts. I guess for one of my weird meta opening questions, since we know each other well enough that you won't get freaked out by this, how have your comics changed for you? And how have you changed in relation to them?
It's hard to pinpoint it exactly because it was a lot of things coming together sort of at the same time. I had started my begging chart and gotten maybe 20 pages done or something, like, slowly. And I just got into this like mental state, and I don't even remember how long I was in it, but I was having like a bunch of fatigue and other things were going on. This was before the pandemic. It was like fall of 2019 probably. And I kept looking at individual panels and isolating them from story completely, and I was painting a little bit more, and I just wanted to like look at an image. I wanted to get free of the content and be able to just like relax into looking at something that still had like a tone, a point of view, but and a style, but wasn't so much always tied to like a lot of information or a story or like a bigger context. And so I kind of went there. It was hard to even remember like exactly what happened or what order it happened in, because a lot of things were happening. Rat Time had come out, I was done with working with Koyama. They were pushing that book, but I wasn't working on anything else for them. So I was kind of in the middle of things. So I didn't have a contract, and I felt like really disconnected from everything. And I had made, a few pages, but didn't know if it was going to be a book or not. And then I really didn't want to jump into anything because I really didn't know if I was going to do another whole book. I mean, my mind was kind of open to everything. Like maybe I'll do a mini comic, or maybe I'll just paint, or, I did other projects. I did like illustrations for a book that Brian Cremens put together with Brandon Costello, which is like a more academic comic book. It's not a comic book. It's a book about comics, a series of essays. So I did like the cover, and I did a bunch of paper dolls that were kind of based on like the Barbie and Marvel. Like Barbie was Barbie comics were published by Marvel and included a bunch of paper dolls. Yeah, like in the 80s. So I was like looking at all that material a lot and just thinking about drawing and line drawing and image, just in terms of composition and like how much of a story you could tell without words, or storylines. And it was really nice and relaxing to be able to have like something to do that wasn't about me. I really had like I don't know what it was, but I felt really different about my life at that point. I was having, like MS problems for sure. And I was like lying around a lot and crying a lot and just trying to like cope with that and figure things out. I still wanted to make something, but I was too tired a lot of the times. And now looking back, like my energy has gotten like much, much better. But I think I was just also in like such a state of confusion and doubt that I was tired because of that, like with my own problems and a lot of people, like it's never exactly clear, like whether your mental problems are causing physical problems or physical problems are causing mental problems, and it's like how much motivation is so tied into that, so eventually I figured out a way to write about my life again, like write autobio in a way that didn't feel like I was sort of leaning too hard on like the reality of my life. I was able to make images that like worked kind of like I wanted the paintings to work and that told a story, but it wasn't so much about like the story of me and the whole truth of what's going on. I wanted it just to be like a little bit escapist actually. And then when I got to that point, then I found a new way of working, and that was when Peggy had reached out and said, do you want to work on a book? And I was still like excited about the prospect of working with Drawing Quarterly, but I still didn't have like complete faith in my process, like, am I really going to be able to finish this book? But then things just got easier and easier. And then when I felt like, yes, I definitely have enough pages, I'm on a roll here, there will be an end to this book, then we signed the contract. And from that point on, like, it was relatively very easy to finish the book. Even with the beginning of the pandemic and everything, like I had worked out whatever problems. I know I spent a lot of time like obsessing about this stuff, like hours and hours and hours, and I wrote all this stuff down and then I threw it all out. Like it's kind of a mystery to me, like what even happened and what I was thinking and feeling at that time. But like somehow I was able to like find movement. So yes, there's lots of differences, and I know I didn't say anything clear about what those differences are. To me, it feels different.
No, this stuff to me is fascinating, especially for an artist like you who has worked in autobiography for so many years, knowing that you're also telling the story of not the story, you're telling stories of your family and the world around you and all, but how much, looking at yourself in relation to making art about yourself and the world around you, how you start marking those changes, how you start seeing things in terms of, am I doing anything new here? Am I making something that matters? And it sounds like that's part of what you were going through, along with, the momentous stuff that's going on in your life with your health and everything else. So, not exactly comics as therapy, but like comics as analysis, if that makes sense. And again, I'm an outsider here, so I don't know what it's like for you, on the inside of actually creating this and working through, the versions of you over the years.
I think all those things, like comics that matter, comics that are analysis, comics that, what was the third thing you said?
Something.
Something.
Charting your life and all that.
Yeah, I mean, all those things. I think what made me able to do it again was getting rid of all those thoughts and expectations as much as possible. Like I really... I don't ask myself, like, is this important or does this matter or whatever? Like, I don't care at all if it does. I want to be making comics that I'm happy with and that I want to look back on, that I'm pleased with. And I'm thrilled that other people want to read them. That's obviously like extremely good. And I don't want to just be like making them and then putting them in a drawer or something. But like right now, if people reviewed my book really badly and Peggy dumped me, like if all these things happened and, it just became clear, like, well, there's no future in this, professionally. I don't think I would pivot and make different comics. I think I would just like go back to self-publishing and be happy with the, 20 people that want to read them. Like, I feel like the work I'm making, I finally found a place where right now I'm really making what I want to be making. So even if somebody had like a really great idea and said, oh, you know what, the best page of your book is this one, make more stuff like this. Like, I don't think I'd be able to necessarily like take their advice, because it's just not about strategy. It's not about like making the best thing. It's just that I just sort of know what I want to do right now, and I just want to keep doing it. And I'm, everything, like any attention, like that's fantastic. But it felt really, really horrible to not be able to make comics, to not have the motivation or whatever it was, overthinking it, whatever. And now, like, being able to do it again, whatever's happening in my mind that's making that possible it doesn't work like therapy or analysis. It's just like eating a healthy diet or sleeping enough. It's like, oh, that was just the right amount. Like, that is balancing my body out and my psyche out, just because it's like getting a massage, like it's not because of the thoughts or the meaning. It's just like this physical thing that helps.
What do you enjoy doing in the act of making comics? Like, are there moments where you experience actual joy in terms of drawing or, putting together? I ask, and it's something that I've brought up in a bunch of recent episodes, so people are just going to tune out for this. I started drawing in the last couple of months, and it's just me drawing trees and stuff, but there is a everything else melts away thing that I didn't realize I could experience. And it hit me a few months into it, like, holy shit, I'm not thinking about generic drug user fee negotiations or anything else. I'm thinking about how to draw this fucking tree. And, I'm starting to wonder now about you guys doing this professionally, but also, whether you have that degree of joy and that degree of, this is the thing I should be doing in the moment.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up as you were asking the question. I was like, oh, this is just like his tree drawings. And I wonder what you're feeling as you're making this. I think it's great. When you're doing something like so straightforward, you're drawing trees from observation. Trees are beautiful things, and you're trying to capture, like them as individuals, and you're being like very faithful to how they look, or it looks like that's what you're doing,
So you think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're selecting, obviously, the tree, you're making some choices, but the choices then, once you start drawing from observation and you're being kind of faithful to what you're observing, is very much like figure drawing is for a lot of people, or drawing a still life in like a beginning drawing class. Like, it really is a mental process that is like working out. And that is kind of like what I've come back to. And you hit it exactly. Like, I do get a joy from that, because the process where I'm at right now has returned to this really direct thing. Like, my goal is really direct and straightforward. I'm not trying to, I think what happened is like you start, having that obsessive brain, and in autobiocomics that can happen so easily, as it can for any other kind of comic too, or art form. Your brain just starts thinking about everything too much. And the more you think about meaning, and the more you think about how people are going to misread it, and the more, like it just can lead to like such a complex knot of thoughts that you can't even do it anymore. And that happens with autobio in the way that it's like, I'm portraying myself. How is this type of reader going to feel about themselves when they read about myself, looking at myself this way? Are they going to feel like better about their life or worse about their life? Are they going to feel jealous, or are they going to feel like bitter? Or are they going to pity me? Like all those things are possible. And once you get down that road of like what all the impressions could possibly be, like it's totally paralyzing. So I got to a place where it's like, oh, I do know how to make a comic. It is exactly like drawing a tree from observation. Like, I sit down, I do it this way. I don't have to have extra thoughts. And I kept thinking about that clothing project that I did, where like it was sewing and knitting everything. One of the things I did like about that, like, sewing is so frustrating. Like, everything goes wrong all the time. And I don't know why I've done it so much, because I hate it. But I did like that my mind was like completely full of like little technical problems to solve, because I would be thinking, there's a way to make this skirt without the pattern instructions for this waistband. Like, that waistband is too hard to do. I can do it this way. It'll look good. And it was just like all this problem solving. And it wasn't rewarding in the sense that, like, if you make a beautiful drawing or a funny drawing, like, people react to it. It's just like, you work really hard to solve this problem, and then it's like completely unimpressive, and you alone can celebrate it. So that's what I don't like about it. But I did like that my mind was full of these problems that weren't personal, So what I'm trying to do is, still like write about my life, but not obsess about my problems, not obsess about, like the meaning of everything. Just like have experiences and experience them in a direct way, like drawing a tree, where you have like a clear goal, and it doesn't matter who you are, like, I can do that exercise, you can do that exercise. It doesn't matter at all that you're a different person than me, like the comics, I want to be that way. Like, I'm drawing about my life, and a reader doesn't have my life, but I think they could experience my book almost in the same way I can. The way you enter a novel, like your identity doesn't matter in the process of reading it.
Yeah. In that therapeutic way, do you find that being able to distill your experiences into the page like this helps give you some perspective that feeds back into your day-to-day life?
Yeah. I wish more. I wish I could make my life better. I mean, that's what everybody's trying to do, right?
So we hope. Yeah.
Yeah. And my life is great. Like, it's,
But we all have our anxieties. We all have those things that we get wrapped up into. And I wonder for you, as you, like you say, or I put it, as you distill those things or essentialize them into a page, is there a moment of, why did I get so worked up about X, Y, and Z? Maybe I can stop getting that worked up in future, but
Well, I mean, yeah, I've had a lot of time to examine that. I mean, I personally, and I think I know I'm not the only one that does this. I think it's easier to deal with things that other people recognize as having magnitude, like, I mean, the pandemic, when it started, I talked to you early on, and it was like very, very clear what the priorities were. The priorities were like, keep yourself safe, this and this and this. And like, there were so many rules and restrictions, and it's like, okay, now you just have to deal with like staying home with your child, monitor them, whatever. Everybody had like a little different set of things. But now that some people can go out, people who have unvaccinated children cannot go out as much. Yeah. It's like, now I'm having like fear of missing out. Now I'm having, all these things. All I'm saying is, like, it's these things, like, I'll have an anxiety attack like almost every single time I have to go grocery shopping, because I can't decide which store I should go to out of like the 5 stores. And it's like, it honestly matters so little, it's such a stupid thing. And I can recognize, even in the middle of my like hyperventilating, like, I just have to get in the car and go somewhere. This will end. It's not a big deal. I get really stressed out because of my puppy, like having a puppy whining. It's like, oh, that sound, it just like crawls up inside of me and turns me into like a complete freak. have such a hard time handling that, and it is so minor. And like the bigger things, like having MS, getting the diagnosis. Like I went to like 100 doctor's appointments alone. I went through like 6 MRIs. I don't even mind them anymore. Like I have so many things like biopsied and tested and constant, like, it just doesn't end. I don't know what it is. I think something was put on my medical file, and it was just like, she needs to be examined. Like, and most of the time, like, I get good news. Like just yesterday, I had to go to an ophthalmologist because they needed to see if I had glaucoma, and it was a 2-hour appointment and whatever. And like, I didn't have it. It's just like MS, damage to my eye, which I knew about, but it was like, once a doctor says, oh, we just need to rule this out, like, you have to go through the steps.
Sure.
So like those things,
but that's
are stressful.
Don't cause you anxiety?
No,
yeah.
They don't. It was like, I was kind of relaxed. It was like, oh man, you know what I love? I love going to these doctor's appointments because I get to sit here and do like absolutely nothing and still feel productive because I have to get this done. And like, I kind of like waiting rooms. I like people watching. I love to see like workers, with different jobs, like see their personality. Like, it's very interesting to me to go. Like, all I'm saying is like, you can't judge circumstances and like assume what's going to stress somebody out. And like the bigger things like do have a way of like prioritizing it and giving you a sense of scale, like the pandemic, like everybody's afraid for their life and their health and their safety and all that stuff. And then you have this kind of relief, like, oh, I'm at home, I'm eating crackers because that's all I have. But like, this is the best meal of my life because at least I'm safe and healthy. You have that perspective. But when it's something just like minorly irritating, like you go on vacation and you pack the wrong shoes, and it's like, oh, these shoes are so stupid and I'm embarrassed and I don't want people to see me wearing these, then I can get like, that can cause so much like mental pain for me.
Oh, trust me. I managed to make it through 14 months of pandemia. I haven't had a haircut in 16 months. And I knew it was bad, but until I had to start going out in public for real, it was oh my God, what do I look like to people? There was a moment of, oh, wait a second. This in the bubble of the house, everything was perfectly fine. Once that, re-entry into the world happens, things get really weird. But I noticed, and I'll send you a picture of how bad it looks in the present moment.
I've seen your hair on social media.
It's something. My whole take has been, as my wife says it has it, 50 years old, if I can grow this much hair, I may as well keep it going for a while, until I have to do in-person meetings again. I can fake it well enough. But yeah, no, I noticed like the pandemic doesn't, intrude. There's a few moments of it in my begging chart, but it's, and I don't know how much of that is that most of the pages were done pre-pandemic, or that the life you were living in that moment, you can sort of, again, in that household bubble, the stories you tell aren't necessarily going to be dominated by face mask props, lying on the desk or anything like that. So yeah, how much of it was pre-pandemic and how much did the pandemic influence, sort of going back and drawing what you were doing?
I don't know what like page number is, but it's the second appearance of Robin, or I don't know. It's the last time he appears in the book. He comes into the bedroom and says, "Are you awake?" And everything after that page is pandemic. And it's not clear because it's like just Zia at the kitchen or, whatever, like we're not wearing masks. So you wouldn't necessarily know it, but that's how much of the book was pandemic. My life did change like very dramatically, just, because I was working at home, teaching on Zoom was so different, and Zia having school at home, and not seeing my friends in person, like those things were really different. But I just already was making so much work about Zia and Scott and me, like my cast of characters was already just sort of focused on us, and I had focused on like what the drama of the home,
Yeah, that's what I was wondering,
Yeah,
whether you were
already.
still able to do that without having to, by the way, there's a pandemic on, where,
Right.
normal things are still the normal things.
Yeah, so I don't know why. I thought about it all the time. I read all the articles, I read about COVID all the time, and like, it definitely was like, took over my whole mind. And I just really didn't want to make my comics about that. I just wanted to have like one place, again, like kind of escapist, where I could hang on to anything that was sort of the same as it was before.
Yeah, I get you. And that's come up with a couple of both writers and cartoonists I've talked with who've had books come out in recent months. It's one of those, like, it's not specifically about the pandemic, and I didn't want to start, shoehorning that in or make it somehow a tie-in or something like that. So, it's one of those things we're all going to be dealing with in terms of how the fact that I'm doing all these remotely, like we said, it's
Right.
a different thing than what we're used to. But
Yeah.
there is a sequence in the book about you shredding your sketchbooks and journals.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, A, what prompted that, and B, is that something I should consider doing also? Or with me, it's just journals. I just have like two sketchbooks at this point. But I'm the joke about the sketchbooks, by the way, is I dumped all of the images into a Flickr set chronologically, and I realized once I did that it looked like a person with traumatic brain injury getting better. When I looked at the beginning ones versus where it went, I'm like, oh my God, that's what it looked like 3 months ago. And these trees look so much better now. Anyway, that's just me saying something insensitive and inappropriate. But yeah, tell me about the journal shredding. So.
I wouldn't say anybody should or shouldn't do anything, especially, well, not that. Shredding or saving or whatever. I think it's like such a completely personal, choice. I don't want so much stuff around. I want to have space in my life. And so I was just like doing a deep clean of my studio, and I think it was a combination of like letting go of physical things, but also letting go of memories and letting go of the fact that, like if I ever want to write about those periods of my life or something like that, like I can do that, but it's going to be based on my memory, and I want it to be more about the present. It was like realizing like I never have to put together my history. I never have to like write my biography in like a very realistic way. Like,
Sure.
I don't have to keep track of that. And actually it was like extremely fortunate that Christopher Borelli wrote an article about me for the Chicago Tribune, which came out this week, which was amazing. And he's brilliant. And it was very cool to like see how that process worked. And I think he did like such a nice job with the article and everything. But it was kind of excruciating going through it because I felt like, he was asking me a lot of questions about my past, and he's not any interview does that a lot of times, because you're just trying to like put together, like, well, how did you get to this point, and I feel like I don't know, and I don't care. Here I am. I might be at a different point tomorrow. The way I approach comics is like there is no origin story, and I could bring up 10 memories of my childhood and then 10 completely different ones. And like, I don't know if any of them will explain why I am the way I am right now. Like, the more you start answering those questions, the more impossible it seems. But it also felt like my obituary was being written. Because he like interviewed people about me, and I was like, oh my God, don't talk to my friends about me. That's like, I want to be in on that. I don't I don't want you to get attention from my friends. If I want them to just call me and hang out with me. It's just
well, there were aspects of the profile where I got the feeling he didn't realize you'd be as say blunt, acerbic, whatever, as you'd be with, just I'm sitting on the floor of the kitchen, read every 7th page of the book, just throwing things like that out there. But I enjoyed the heck out of the profile, and it's wonderful to see you get that sort of treatment, I guess. It's you deserve it, which, is one of those things that I know you don't take well, which leads to the next well, I don't know how well you take it because we don't know each other that well. Well, it's just that question. There are in the Chicago Tribune profile, there are a whole bunch of, it brings to the fore the number of your peers in cartooning who have so much respect for the work you do. And I wonder, A, how uncomfortable that makes you reading, people saying nice stuff about your work, especially when they're other cartoonists. And B, how much you think about cartoonists in particular when you think about, as we talked about, the anxiety you have about readers and audience expectations. Do you think in particular of cartoonists as readers?
No, I never do.
Okay, that's what I wondered. And then how uncomfortable did it make you to have, nice things said about you by other cartoonists?
I mean, that was just really nice. But of course, the people specifically in that article, I know that I don't think they're being fake liars because they don't have a history with me that would make them be that way, but yeah. People that I've known for a really long time, you can get really paranoid, if somebody writes congratulations on Facebook, I feel like
they're undercutting you.
Yeah. This is awful. It is so much better to just assume everybody's being honest and genuine, because when I'm writing congratulations on Facebook, I am being genuine. I don't do that if I don't mean it, but I have developed a lot of paranoia during the pandemic. I'll just put it out
just during the pandemic? Oh my God.
It has accelerated. It has become a much bigger problem for me than it was before. And I think it comes from, you couldn't trust anybody, because any person could make you sick, and so it was that, I think it went beyond COVID, and it's a little bit harder for me to trust people, maybe in this moment. And I'm aware of it, I'm just, I can have that thought and think, okay, they may or may not mean it. They probably mean good things. I have no reason to suspect anything wrong. Nothing wrong has ever happened with this person, I can question those thoughts and dismiss them. But I don't know. There's something about getting any kind of attention. It's a lot of pressure and it's uncomfortable. And so I'm grateful for it, but it also has been very stressful,
Mm-hmm. Have you gotten back to in-person hangouts post-vaccine?
God, yeah. A little bit. I got to see my family, which was amazing. The month of May has been 100% puppy problems. So I've been completely confined, about that. But yeah, I'm getting there a little bit. A little bit.
It's real strange.
Yeah.
I keep coming up with excuses not to do in-person shows, even though for a year I was saying how much I want to record in person. Now it's boy, I sure liked having my weekends and not sitting in a car going to New York and going on a subway. And, so yeah, it's those things that we thought we wanted back. And it's I actually, let's ease into this a little.
Yeah, well, I think you only have so much time and energy, and I remember craving those things too. I just want to do errands all day and drive around and whatever. But it's I'm being so inarticulate. it's all the MS stuff too. I made my life basically into other people's pandemic life, like a year before the pandemic, going to bed like very early every single night, like never doing things at night, and never leaving the house after 6 p.m. really. And, just like always just making things like so much smaller and simpler for myself, and not driving around because I don't have the attention span or whatever. And, so it's been really crazy because it's like, well, you're at home, you can do everything now. And it's like, I get into this situation, like I'm talking to you in my dining room. Scott is upstairs in the studio doing a different Zoom event. We're both doing professional things on a Saturday at the same time. Zia is, thank God, being like super quiet in her room and the puppy is asleep. But I was like, this could be total chaos because there's nobody actually in charge of like making things be quiet. And I think I'm experiencing that on a small scale, but like that is the fact. All these parents with kids at home, like our lives, some people's lives have become like so chaotic because there's just this appearance you can do everything if you're not driving around.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But we have all this extra time, but yeah, we also have all these crazy responsibilities that get piled on, directly.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have kids, so, different sort of situation, but still. Even a couple days ago, I was part of a Senate briefing with industry and FDA. We're briefing a Senate committee at my day job. And I had told my wife this, but I don't think she understood that meant don't walk by in the background with a dog to go outside. Maybe you could go out the front door instead of downstairs here. And it's just one of those, like, luckily I wasn't speaking, so my tile wasn't, big on Zoom, but it was just one of those like, yeah, all things considered, that's a mild breach of protocol given what we've all gone through over the past year plus. But yeah, it's definitely been strange. It's sort of what I was wondering when you were talking about early on your sort of withdrawing from comics and autobiography and then returning to them. How much of that was tied into the onset of the pandemic and the way everyone else's lives sort of turned into the structure, like you said, you'd gone into pandemic mode a year or so early. How much of it was, oh, well, everybody's like me now. I guess I can go back to making comics and telling stories, or were those things utterly unrelated?
I don't even.
It wasn't much of a question.
Yeah, I don't know.
In a different direction, let me ask about Zia. Does she ever shoot down any of your stories? Because Roger Langridge has been dealing with this in his daily diary comic. He got one of the children pissed off at him on several occasions over the past year and had to kind of pull them out and put a robot daughter in temporarily until it just didn't work anymore, or the daughter said it's okay to tell stories about me. But has she shot down any of your stuff?
No, she'll like nitpick. She'll say, I wasn't wearing that shirt. And she like loves to point out everything. Like she'll go through my book and like laugh at somebody's hand the way it's drawn, or say like, we weren't, at this place at that time, or she gets really hung up on these things. But I also make mistakes that like shouldn't be made. Like I'll draw somebody with a V-neck shirt and then a round crew neck, like in the next panel, and it's supposed to be one time. So she is kind of like my editor. But she has given me the okay eye in just about everything. She'll really notice like if I word something wrong, if it wasn't exactly the way she says it, like she's very good at bringing that up. But yeah, she's been having a lot of fun with it. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to ask on the flip side, do you get the feeling she does things deliberately because she knows you'll make this story out of it?
She definitely does. She's like a performer. Like we joke that it's the Zia show, because especially when kids get like slap happy before bedtime, she'll just laugh hysterically at nothing. And, she dances around. And I mean, she's extremely gregarious. Yeah, and I'll have to tell her sometimes it's like the camera's off. Like I'm not, I'm not paying attention to you. I'm not going to write any of this down.
Oh, man. Yeah. Does she give you notes in that respect? Like, hey, Mom, maybe you'd like to write about, and
Yeah,
just
she
give you a
does.
little.
She's like, that should be a comic. And I'm like, make it yourself.
Yeah. Does she show any inclination in that, the family business?
She has made a few comics, and she made one that actually was like so much like in my tone of voice. It was really kind of crazy. And I'd like her to do more, but she's really into other things. Like she is doing all these digital drawings, like fashion design. She's really into fashion and clothes right now. And she's learning how to sew, and that's actually what I was into when I was her age. Is sort of making.
And you didn't warn her?
Oh, she's been warned. She knows, like, I can tolerate giving her a sewing lesson for about 10 minutes, and then then I'll be yelling, crying, whatever, super frustrated. But
yeah, you don't do this, you'll end up like me. That's
I know.
Yeah. I always feel bad. My father was a photographer, and the first time he praised, my eye for, a particular composition, I thought that's both good and bad. Because, ultimately I really don't want to be compared, but, it's a problematic relationship. So.
Well, I think she senses that. I mean, I think she's like much more inclined to do anything that isn't a comic because I don't know.
Yeah.
She hasn't articulated it, but she actually does draw. Well, she draws so much better than I did at her age, like, and sculpts, and everything she does is like creative writing. Like it's all way, way ahead of where I was. And you can't always tell her drawings from mine. Like if somebody just like draws something on a card or something, like people don't know. Like my mom won't know who drew it sometimes, or Scott won't know. He'll see something and he'll say, "Oh, who drew this?" And that makes her so happy,
Wow. That beats Kate LaCour, who had just said straight up, both on Twitter and on the show, that her kid just can't draw to save his life.
Really?
just got awful. And she just throws it out there. Like, my son's a horrible artist. It's great.
Wow.
Yeah. So it happens with some of this. But one of the things we talked about when we had our COVID check-in last year, you had already, kind of toned down or cut out travel for festivals and cons and everything.
Yeah.
Is it the sort of thing you'd consider nowadays, or is the combination, post-pandemic, or does, MS and just where you are in life preclude you from, wanting to go be around comics people and, the whole festival thing, but particularly comics people?
I mean, I would definitely think about it. I would be extremely tempted to go. I would love to go to SPX again or someplace, but I would need to do it in a way that I wouldn't feel like totally overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And like it's way too overwhelming to be there with Zia and Scott and have the dog, with a dog sitter and be worried about, like there's a lot of things to worry about. If I could go alone, I'd almost be better off, but then I don't want to go alone. I want my family with me. So it's like, I don't know, the circumstances would have to be sort of just right.
I think Keiler Con. Just have the festival at your place. That would make sense.
Well, that's another thing. I mean, like we used to have a really big holiday party, and it would be just like packed with cartoonists and people we knew and everything. And the December before the pandemic, we didn't have the party for the first year ever, because I just like couldn't handle it anymore. But then, of course, the following December, when everybody was like Zooming with their families, for the holidays, I was like, oh my God, I wish I had that party, So I don't know, maybe that'll come back.
Yeah. When it comes to the MS, I mean, you've mentioned how it's affected your energy in particular and also some of the eye problems. Does it directly impact your writing and drawing at this point? Or is it more the energy side of it that leaches from what you want to be doing?
Yeah. My brain
Hey,
doesn't
tell me
work.
if that's too personal a question,
No,
by
it's
the way.
not too personal, but it's like hard to
Okay.
answer because I just like, it's, my brain doesn't work in the same way, and it works, you know, but it's like, I mean, I'm more in the moment a lot of times than I was. I'm more present. But I get confused really easily and
Yeah.
overwhelmed really easily. And like if you're talking to me and I'm getting texts, just even the sound of that text, like I have a really hard time controlling where my attention goes, and I will get overwhelmed. I'll be like so stressed out because there are two inputs at the same time. And the same thing, I mean, if the dog is like crying and Zia's asking me a question and Scott says something, you know, it'll make me cry. You know, it's just like, it strikes me as like unbelievable pressure, you know? And that didn't used to happen so easily. It's like, it just can come on like really quickly at like almost no stimulation, you know? So I have a harder time with that. And I think like I have a harder time getting started, you know, and that definitely affects comics because, you know, it's just like hard to actually get my butt in the chair with the drawing board. So I've done all these things in my process, like to make it easier so that I don't have to think about anything. So it's all set up so I can just like get in and out. If I can just get started, you know, then everything else is easy. So like not writing long stories. I have my portfolio. There's always like 20 more pages to work on. That just sort of, and all I have to do is pick one and get started, and it doesn't take that long to make a page, and then I get that little reward from finishing something, and then I'm on to the next one. So it's kind of like, I think about it like in terms of playing cards or like games where there's a strategy where you have to hold something in your mind the whole time. You know, like you have to keep track of maybe the cards someone else has played. I was never good at that kind of thing, but now more than ever, I can't hold something in my mind while I'm doing something else, you know? So I will forget to email people back or whatever if I check a text and then something else happens right away, like I won't respond because I will have forgotten about it. So I've gotten better at like systems of review, you know, like I try to sit down every few days and look through the last 50 emails and see what I missed, or, you know, like I have all these safety nets because of all these problems that I have now that I didn't have before. The feeling of like, I'm not having this quite as much, but a lot of it was like sensory, especially a couple years ago. Like I would have a really hard time being in a room, and I was taking exercise classes like at the, you know, gym, and when there would be mirrors on two sides of the room and maybe too much sunlight or something, and like there's so many bodies in the room and in the reflection and stuff, like I would easily sort of lose track of where I was, and I can't see that well and I'm overheated, and so it would all of a sudden just be like complete chaos. And, you know, it's kind of dizzying and, you know, overwhelming. And there were times when, like in Zumba, which is like this totally frantic, you know, kind of manic, you know, dance type aerobics anyway, where they would like have the class like all form lines and then dance at each other and like crisscross and all this stuff. And it was like, I don't know how I survived that, you know, like it was so stupid of me, but I was so embarrassed to like leave, you know, but it was like very hard. And I tried to do a boxing class and I almost punched this guy in the face, you know, because like I'm not coordinated. Yeah. That's another thing that just like really happened. Like my coordination is okay at times, but it really has gotten worse at other times. And I drop things and I miss, and it's partly being spatially overwhelmed, but also just like your body doesn't connect in the same way. And that even happens like with speech, like you're so used to your mouth just doing automatic things. And like, you never think about your tongue when you're eating or swallowing or speaking. And for the first time, like when I'm really tired, it's like my tongue isn't working, you know, I'll like start drooling or, you know, the words get garbled or something like that. Or I have to like think really, really hard about how to speak clearly. You know, people, and this is another thing that's happening. It's like when I'm speaking, it is like somebody just like opened the hydrant and there is just like this shooting uncontrollable thoughts coming out. And I don't think that happened as much before. I mean, it's just like so much about control, I guess. Like things, I don't feel like I'm in control of things nearly as much. There was one other thing I wanted to say. I mean, my train of thought is all over the place. Like it comes around.
Yeah, but that's not that different. Okay.
It's not that different, but it's more extreme. I don't know. Oh, like there's a T-shirt, I think, or like I'm not drunk, I have MS, like that I've seen, online and stuff. And like that comparison, you do look like you're drunk a lot, and it is like to be sober and to be spilling and knocking things over and tripping and, like have your speech get slurred and stuff like that. Like it is kind of like living that way.
So given all of that, how did you handle being the live Instagram host on Drawn and Quarterly's feed? Because a couple of you guys, I think it was like Daryl Cunningham and a few other people have had to do this.
Yeah.
And I've talked to them before, and they've been full of dread and terror as to what it's going to be like. You've actually done it already. Given everything, that you have to deal with the sensory inputs and everything else, what was that like?
It was like very strange and extremely stressful. It was also really fun. But I don't know. I don't think I was necessarily more nervous than the other people. I mean, I talked to John Porcelino like the morning before his, and he was like, "I'm trying not to throw up." I mean, it's just it's nerve-wracking. Yeah. I guess like the thing that's I have gotten so much better at like accepting things going wrong,
Oh yeah. The past year has taught us so much. In addition to what our best Zoom angle is, it really has taught us that everything's going to break down. Nobody has a perfect connection. We'll all be okay. But yeah. Oof.
Yeah. But I mean, on a personal level, like if I
emotionally we're all shattered. Yeah.
Well, we're all shattered, but like if you draw a blank, if you suddenly like don't have any idea what to say, or you tuned out and didn't hear the question, or like don't know what a word means or something, like I used to live in like much, much bigger fear of those kinds of things. And I've gotten better at just like admitting, I spaced out. I didn't hear what you said,
I wish I was you. And I've told this story recently. On my birthday in January, a few days after, someone called, but the incoming number I couldn't tell. And as I was putting my AirPods in, that's when they said who they were, but I didn't hear it because I went half an hour not knowing who I was talking to. It was incredible. I talked to this guy. Literally at the 28-minute mark, I finally figured out who it was and made sure I said his name so he didn't think retroactively, did Gil know who I was this entire conversation? Because I had no idea. And I talked to someone for half an hour without knowing who it was, knowing that they were a friend of mine somehow in the Toronto area who was calling for my birthday. And I was like, but it's not Sam. It's not this one or that one. Who the hell is this? I'm going to it's a work-related person, but I know I've seen them in a non-work context, and I'm going to fake it. But so yes, I wish, like you, I could just say, I'm sorry, I missed it when you said your name just now. Instead, I put myself through like an AI test, basically, for half an hour.
Well, I think like somehow that wasn't ever part of like the social skills coaching, like how to cover for these little errors that happen, or even like if somebody introduces themselves, a brand new person, and you hear it, you often forget it within minutes,
seconds. But I usually write it down. If I can, I'll scribble the name down so I can at least,
which is what you need to do. But it's like, then how do you admit it? There are ways to do that in a really smooth way that's not impolite and all that stuff, but like nobody teaches you that stuff.
Yeah. In a separate one, I had a business call with a woman who, very, very butch sounding person, but her name was feminine. And we finished the call and I said, "Hey man, it's been great talking to you." And I emailed her afterwards. I'm like, "I'm sorry about the man thing, cause her voice is really masculine. And I was afraid she, felt I was making some sort of statement by using man instead of, a non-gender specific pronoun."
Yeah.
Just a weird thing to do. And she's like, "Dude, I go through much worse every day before 9 a.m. So don't worry. You didn't screw anything up." I'm like, "Okay, just not wanting to be that guy." But yeah, we do tend to fall into reflexes or just have, the things we miss and don't quite, know how to make up for, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of all that, do you keep a begging chart of your own? Yeah. Zia's in the back of the book, and it's the title of the whole thing, but
I don't beg. No, I don't need to keep a chart.
I can never tell what things, actually matter for us as adults and what we're supposed to, not take the way kids do. But yeah. Now, let me ask something else that comes up in the book, and it's something I only discovered on my third trip there. The Art Institute Museum in Chicago.
Yeah.
The Thorn miniatures. Are they your favorite thing in the museum, or do you have a something else that's your absolute fave to go see when you're there?
I really don't think I have a favorite. I like so many things there, and I used to have a favorite painting. And on one of the trips I had there, I was pointing out to a friend of mine, and I realized all I cared about was pointing out this painting and saying that's my favorite painting. And I realized, gosh, I didn't even really look at it this time. And how is it still really my favorite if I don't even feel compelled to stand here and look at it anymore compared to the other stuff? And so then I was like, gosh, this labeling of our favorite thing and what, is just another form of identify with this or whatever, it's so much better to just go into the museum and just see what you see and let things affect you one day versus another. But I will say this, I saw the, medieval, they have these taxidermied horses in armor in that wing, and I didn't discover them until just a few years ago, and they have so much energy, and it is such a strange room to be in. So I guess currently that would be the thing I would go to right away if I, the next time I go. But yeah, I mean, I love the miniature rooms. I love, the building I work in is attached to the museum, and so you can walk just really quickly through the whole museum on your way in or out. And I love that process. That there was, I don't know which book it was, Chlorine Gardens maybe, the gigantic stone Buddha sculpture.
Oh, yeah.
Is something that you just kind of run by on your way through the museum, which kind of cracks me up. But I love it. I love seeing this big stone Buddha, the most still peaceful sculpture of all time that, emanates this feeling. But just walking by it really fast, so many times. It's such a cool experience.
Yeah. Do you find art changing for you in terms of things that resonate now that didn't when you saw them when you were younger, or a different person?
Yeah, yeah, I think I'm open to a somewhat broader, scope of things, but I think when you're a young artist, especially me being a painter, I spent so much time really thinking about anything that would be an influence that I, was really important to me as a painter in terms of developing and all that stuff. And, now that I can sort of detach to just experience an ancient pot or something that has nothing to do with anything I'll ever make, I can be open to having that affect me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much the only form I don't dig is the decorative, cookware, the whatchamacallit. It's like the tea sets and things like that.
Yeah.
I've seen them in great museums. I'm like, these things leave me completely flat. I don't know what it is. Most forms I can get into in some way or another. I'm like, I respect what they're doing here, but it just doesn't move me as art. But, because I'm a rube of some kind or another, I guess. But my big question that I always ask, and I don't know how much the pandemic has affected you in this way, along with MS and your focus and everything else. What are you reading?
I am reading so many things. I don't know if I can even name one. Andy Brown, who runs Conundrum Press, just sent me like all the new books that are coming out. And the one that I started this morning is called The Gift by, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. It's Zoe. It looks like the word mauve, but it's not quite that. It's beautiful. I love the way she draws, and I've never heard of her. And it's like this very small book with really gorgeous drawings. Drawn and Quarterly sent me a bunch of like fantastic books. Wang Pixon like paints her whole comics, and like I like to like read through the book and then just like look at it a bunch of times and just sort of experience it separately as like individual images, sort of separate from the stories, because it works in this like really slow way. I'm reading in terms of like not comics, Disability Visibility by Alice Wong, which is a collection of essays. And I've only read like 3 of the essays, but it's like very, very good. I haven't done that much research of disability at all. I've read all these articles about just like the MS articles come up on my Facebook, constantly, and I'm always like clicking on those, but those are super specific. And this talks about all kinds of things. And Olive Kittredge, those books, Elizabeth Strout, in terms of novels, I just started Olive again after reading Olive Kittredge, which I love the way she tells stories. I got to put together the bookshelf for Library Drawn and Quarterly. So that's like online, but it's also like in the store. They let me pick out books to recommend. And there are lots and lots of books.
I wasn't sure because a lot of people early pandemic couldn't read at all. Like they just couldn't focus on anything enough. So, but you're making up for it now?
Yeah, kind of. Well, I'm trying to. I'm still like, I still have, a squirrel brain a little bit. It's hard to like relax enough to, read. But I'm getting there.
And last question. When did you realize you had a fixation on the smell of Cabbage Patch Kids? And is there a community of that? It comes up in my begging chart, which is why I ask. But have you found a community of other people who have the same thing, or is it just you in this whole world?
Yeah, I'm actually about to launch the Evanston chapter. No, I'm sure that it is. People remark on it, like the people who know. Those dolls were only scented for like the first year or two, so I only have one that smells that way, and she smells exactly as good as she did. I don't even know if they still use that technology. It's amazing, that smell. And there's nothing else like it. It's baby powder-ish, but I don't like baby powder, like itself. It is a totally intoxicating smell. And strawberry shortcake dolls used to smell really amazing too. And I've been wanting to like buy an old one, but my sister-in-law gave me hers, and the smell doesn't stay in those dolls the same way it did in the Cabbage Patch Kid. There's just My Little Ponies, the old ones, they weren't scented, but just the plastic itself.
See, that's what I thought you were referring to in the comic, because I was used to like the old Mego superheroes and the plastic thing. So I had no idea they were scented. So I guess that makes it slightly more acceptable.
It's scented plastic. I don't know. I am trying to be in the moment more and accept like less going on, as most people are probably trying to do, with the pandemic and everything. But it also is MS because I have spent so much time just like lying on the couch. I've been trying to pay attention to things that aren't my thoughts. And I've spent a lot of time listening to music and smelling things and listening to, birds and household sounds and stuff like that. And I have become more aware of these things, and I have gotten more into smell. I don't know.
Well, I mean, as long as it keeps you, I don't want to say focused, but as long as it keeps you, who you are, and you're able to
keep me focused.
It keeps you from distraction or keeps you in distraction. You're still making good work. So, speaking of, should I ask if there's another book in planning?
Oh, sure.
Or
yeah.
Okay.
It's more.
What's
I've
gotten
next? 60 pages done. I don't have a title yet. Wow. Nothing. I don't have a date or anything like that. But I'm firmly into the next book, so there will be another one.
You know me, I champion your stuff, to everybody. So I'm glad to see this one, and I'm glad to know there's more coming. So
thank you.
Anyway, thanks so much for coming on, Keiler. Oh, you're barking at me now after all we've been through?
Yeah, Pepsi's on cue. He knows you're trying to wrap up.
He said, it's the 1 hour mark. We're out of here.
I know.
Be well, Keiler. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And that was Keiler Roberts. Her new book is My Begging Chart from Drawn and Quarterly. I loved it. I hope you check this one out, as well as Keiler's previous books published by Koyama Press. You can find those in better bookstores and comic shops. And you can find out more about Keiler at her site, KeilerRoberts.com, which is KeilerRoberts.com. She's also on Twitter as Keiler Roberts, all one word, and on Instagram as Keiler Jean, with Jean spelled Jean, also all one word. I'll have links to all that stuff on the show and episode notes for this one, but go check out Keiler's work, go to her site, go see what some of her paintings are like, because like I've said, there's a simplicity to her comics or cartooning style. It's not a sign that she can't draw or paint or make art in a more complex, visual way. She does plenty with her painting, and there's an awful lot going on in those comics themselves. So, like I say, go check out her work, go read My Begging Chart as well as her previous books. Now, as housekeeping goes, you can support the Virtual Memories Show not by giving us money. I'm doing fine with my day job. My expenses are really low. What I would love for you to do to support the Virtual Memories Show is tell other people about it. Let them know if you like this podcast that there is this neat show out there where a guy sits down for conversations with writers and artists and other creative people and lets them talk. And I let her talk, right? I let people talk all the time. Anyway, the other thing you can do to support the show is send me postcards, letters, emails, or leave a message on my Google Voice number, which is 869-9659. And however you reach out, tell me what you like and don't like about the show, who you'd like to hear me record with, what movie or TV show or book or comic or music or whatever you think I should turn listeners on to. I'm always looking for feedback. I'm always looking for good suggestions for that sort of stuff. And it's always nice knowing that somebody, A, took the time to listen to an episode, and B, took the time to drop me a line about it. So you can find my address through the website. You can find my email that way too. And you can use that Google Voice number, which I do not answer. It just tells me when there are messages. So you don't have to worry about my picking it up and getting stuck in a conversation or anything. Again, 973-869-9659. But when it comes to money, if you can spare any, then I hope you will support individuals and institutions in need. You can find individuals through GoFundMe, Patreon, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and various other crowdfunding routes. If you're looking for somewhere to start with institutions or foundations, you can look to your local food bank. I donate to mine every month. The Poor People's Campaign, their freedom funds, election protection funds. You can make political contributions. I know that sounds like a bullshit thing to do, but in my day job as a lobbyist, it's part of what I do. You build relationships with your representatives by contributing to them. They'll remember who you are. They might actually listen when you have an issue that matters, that you can actually, where they can make an impact. Anyway, there are a lot of ways that we can work to build a better world. So if you have any resources to spare, I hope you'll help. Our music for this episode is Fella by Hal Mayforth, used with permission from the artist. You should visit my archives to check out my episode with Hal from the summer of 2018 and learn more about his art and painting. And you can listen to his music at soundcloud.com/Mayforth. And that's MAY4TH. And that's it for this week's episode of the Virtual Memories Show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another great conversation. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show and download past episodes at the iTunes Store. You can also find all our episodes and get on our email list at either of our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. You can also follow the Virtual Memories Show on Twitter and Instagram at vmspod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on YouTube, Spotify, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please tell your pals, talk it up on social media, and go to iTunes, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and maybe a review for us. It all goes to helping us build a bigger audience. You've been listening to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth. Keep reading, keep making art, and keep the conversation going.